Hello there, and welcome to what is now episode 10, can you believe it? Of
No.
Yes, it has happened, of We Need to Talk About ...
And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we did it again. We were having so much fun recording our latest episode that we kind of forgot to do the intro. So
we're back in the pub.
This is really getting to be a bit of a habit now.
Well, you know, it's a habit I think that we can enjoy. Well,
I think it is. Excuse me for a moment.
You get those vocal cords moistened there. As I introduce myself, once again, I am the Big Daddy D, and this bamboo is long, more flexible, and very much alive. Of course, when I say bamboo, I'm basically referring to my body's reaction to seeing the amount of excessive female nudity in the films that we're about to see.
And once again, I am Luke Murphy, and I just despair.
Yes, that's right. I am once again joined by my colleague, cohort, comrade, and fellow failed Bruce Lee clone, Mr. Luke Murphy. That's right. We attempted to clone Bruce Lee, and we ended up with a sarcastic Yorkshireman and an even more sarcastic Cumbrian.
Aren't you lucky, ladies and gentlemen? Aren't you lucky?
And in this episode, we are going to talk about one of the greatest cinematic crimes of all time. We are, of course, talking about Bruceploitation.
Yeah, picking up from our previous episode where we were talking about Bruce Lee's unfinished movie Game of Death. We said that we were looking at various other bits and pieces, and unfortunately, after Bruce Lee's death, people wanted to shamelessly cash in.
Oh yes. However, once again, I feel that we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Just a smidgen.
So let's start from the very beginning.
When Hong Kong martial arts cinema star Bruce Lee died on the 20th of July 1973 at the age of 32, he was already the stuff of legend. The height of Bruce's fame was following the release of Enter the Dragon, which became a box office success worldwide, and shortly afterwards the demand for more Bruce Lee was feverish. Unfortunately, by that point, Bruce Lee was already dead.
Besides the 3 pictures that he'd already completed in Hong Kong and the 40 minutes unfinished Game of Death footage that was languishing in the vaults of Golden Harvest, there was nothing left to give. Game of Death would eventually be pulled out of the archives at Golden Harvest and would be completed by the director of Enter the Dragon, Robert Clouse. But the film didn't hit cinemas until 1978, 5 years after his death. And for more on that, please see the previous episode.
In the meantime, there were plenty of other films that were released to cash in on the sudden demand and international fame of Bruce Lee. A number of film studios across mainland China, Hong Kong and Taiwan hired a number of Bruce Lee lookalike actors to star in imitation Bruce Lee martial arts films throughout the 1970s and 80s. These lookalike actors, who in some cases just had a very similar haircut at best, were rechristened with Bruce Lee-like stage names such as Bruce Lee,
Spelled L-I.
Bruce Lee,
Spelled L-E.
Bruce Tai, Bruce Lai,
L-A-I?
yes, Bruce Liang, Dragon Lee, amongst many others.
And some of these actors would go on to appear in unimaginable rehashes of Bruce Lee classics with titles such as Re-Enter the Dragon, Enter 3 Dragons,
Is it?
Return of Bruce, Return of Fist of Fury 2, The True Game of Death, Goodbye to Bruce Lee, His Last Game of Death, and Enter the Game of Death. Along with many, many, many more besides. These Bruce Lee exploitation films would later become known as Bruceploitation, which is what we're going to be talking about here and now.
Some of these movies played it straight, either using the Bruce Lee name and image as a base to deliver some seriously good martial arts movies. For example, Bruce Lee Fights Back from the Grave starts off with apparently Bruce Lee bursting out of his grave, The rest of the film then has absolutely nothing to do with Bruce Lee whatsoever, but it is quite a decent film.
So hang on, wait a second. Bruce Lee goes out of his grave.
Yes.
And then we go and follow a different story entirely.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with Bruce Lee at all. And the video box as well has Bruce Lee punching his way out of a grave whilst a scantily clad maiden looks on.
Because, you know, why not?
Other films would go on to talk about Lee's life story and explore his philosophies, for example, Bruce Lee's Secret, Bruce Lee the Man, the Myth, etc. But other movies, they went in a completely different direction. Other movies would be just completely batshit insane and would put Bruce into a fantasy setting where he'd have fights with everyone from James Bond and Dracula to angry bulls and ferocious lions. Yes, really.
With that in mind, in order to explore this particular sub-genre a little bit more, we are going to take a look at some of the best and the worst examples of Bruceploitation. All new, all true, screams the poster for Bruce Lee, the Man, the Myth, which came out in 1976. A sincere but rather preposterous Bruce Lee biopic / fanfic. Bruce Lee, L.I., plays the dragon, going through a whistle-stop tour of his life, where he can barely go 2 minutes without getting into a scrap with someone, even on the sets of his own films, where crew members attack him frequently. Talk about unsafe work environments, everybody. But it's okay, because Bruce always wins and offers wicked one-liners to his defeated foes, like, "This isn't me talking, it's Kung Fu."
This is one of the earliest Bruceploitation films out there, and in fact it was the first one that I watched back in the day. Bruce takes on everyone from Italian mafia karate experts to Thai boxers. True to the spirit of Jeet Kune Do, after Bruce receives a challenge from the Thai boxers on the set of The Big Boss, he actually goes to see some real Thai boxing so that he can observe the fighting style and incorporates this into his fight with the Thai boxers in the next fight scene. That didn't actually happen though. There's a couple of films out there that depict Bruce Lee got into a fight with some of his co-workers on the set of The Big Boss. Now, that didn't actually happen. There was like a minor scuffle, and Bruce Lee did spend a bit of time talking with some Thai boxers over their various different styles, but the whole story that he actually had a fight with someone is complete and utter myth.
Well, it's kind of like that, because that was in Dragon.
It was in Dragon, the Bruce Lee story,
where the fight with the actor, so the final fight actually was filmed, and then various other bits and pieces went on.
He has a fight with a character called Johnny Sun, and he defeats him, and afterwards Johnny Sun kicks him in the back and breaks his back. Turned out that's not actually how Bruce injured his back. He actually injured his back when he was doing a workout and he hadn't warmed up properly, so it severely damaged a nerve in his back. And he was bedridden for nearly a year.
Yeah.
But Dragon the Bruce Lee story basically says, oh no, he was bedridden for a year because this fella kicked him in the back. Then when he beat him in a rematch to show off how good his Jeet Kune Do was, because he'd spent a year developing this, when he's later on the set of The Big Boss, Johnny Sun's brother turns up on the set and says, "Oh, I'm here to avenge my brother." and Bruce Lee, the Man, the Myth, does a very similar thing where, you're not that good kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's all complete and utter myth.
At the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, you know, in the eternal struggle between truth and legend, print the legend.
Yeah, it does get a bit blurred. There are some shoddy moments as well during Bruce Lee, the Man, the Myth. We keep getting long, lingering shots of Bruce Lee's gravestone, which I imagine was supposed to be meaningful, but after a while, after the umpteenth long, lingering shot of the gravestone, it just starts to get uncomfortable after a while. There's also a completely bonkers revelation right at the end that suggests that Bruce Lee actually faked his death and is living as a hermit somewhere, and that he will return in about 10 years.
So he should have returned in 1983 then?
Yes.
Bit late. So yeah. Yeah, that theory's been blown out of the water. 1883. Please. Oh dear. Still, what we do get in this film is cracking fight scenes. This is one of the better entry points for anyone new to Bruceploitation. So, pretty good start.
Yes.
However, it quickly goes downhill from now on.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah, Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger, which was released in 1976, and again this stars Bruce Lee.
Yep.
L.I. still. Just, we're going to be saying this all the way through where we say Bruce Lee, and then we'll probably have to make that, like, it's spelled L.I.
Bruce Lee,
It's not
asterisk.
that one. Yeah, it's not that one, it's this one. Okay, very good. Yeah, previous film, The Man, the Myth, was rather respectful. I think we can both basically say that. If a little bit silly at times.
Oh yeah.
This one, however, has a slightly different vibe to it.
Yeah, now we did mention this particular film in the last episode when we were talking about Game of Death, but just to give you how much of an exploitation movie this is, it starts off with Bruce Lee talking to his old friend Bruce Lee on the set of Enter the Dragon. Now, Bruce Lee says he's received a number of strange phone calls and begins to fear for his life, so he urges Bruce Lee
Right.
to avenge his death should anything happen. We then cut to actual stock footage of Bruce Lee's funeral, edited it together with shots of Bruce Lee in mourning as he vows to find out the truth behind his master's death. Lee uncovers a drug dealing conspiracy that killed Bruce Lee for some unspecified reason, and then proceeds to give everyone a right good twatting by way of revenge as lots of funky 70s music plays in the background.
Now, it's a fuck's sake. It's a ridiculous plot device that uses Bruce Lee's real life death as the starting point, which is pretty much unforgivable. Then we have stunning fight scenes that follow, and that almost makes up for it. There's a stunning fight on top of the skyline, which is always a winner. You can pretty much guarantee that health and safety were not considered during the making of this film at all. So the look of fear on the baddies' faces is likely genuine.
Yeah.
The finale sees the hero and the villain scrapping on the rocks at the edge of Hong Kong as giant waves roar and crash around them. So it looks beautiful. It's majestic, it's grand, it's wonderful.
But
Yeah.
the film does have a rather uneven tone. 1 minute we're seeing, just for confusion, Bruce Lee, his character in this is Tiger. He's the Tiger.
Oh, right, okay.
So
Right,
one
okay.
minute we're seeing Tiger's friends getting tortured and beaten to death. The next we're getting some unknowingly fun nods to the real Bruce Lee, such as seeing Tiger fighting a gymnastic who's wearing a very similar looking yellow tracksuit from Game of Death. Or Tiger disguising himself as an old man or a dorky telephone operator like Bruce did in Fist of Fury.
There are some funny meta gags in here too, like a scene in which Lee goes into a bar and is mobbed by young girls who mistake him for the real Bruce Lee. Although some of the editing is downright dreadful, with lots of really awkward looking cuts that gives little regard to continuity. I mean, even the main baddie at the end, the Baron, can't keep a consistent voice going. He sounds completely different in the last scene than what he did in the rest of the movie.
It's not a film that you'd want to watch again, mainly because the film does have a rather nasty streak running through it.
Yeah.
I mean, firstly, I cannot forgive the use of actual stock footage of Bruce Lee's real funeral as a plot device. Game of Death did that as well, and I can't forgive that. It's in extremely bad taste, and unfortunately, it's not the first time that we'll see such a despicable tactic being used. Also, Bruce's mistress, Susie Young, who is involved in the drugs plot, is clearly a thinly veiled caricature of the actress Betty Ting Pei. If you don't know who that is, Ting Pei was actually the actress whose apartment Bruce Lee died in. The story was that Bruce visited Betty's apartment to go over his script for Game of Death, but feeling worse for wear, he took a headache tablet that Betty gave him, lay down to sleep, and didn't get up again. This film is blatantly implying that this actress deliberately drugged Bruce Lee, which is utterly fucking deplorable.
You weren't talking. That's really?
Yeah, I mean, the actress actually got a number of death threats off people, basically saying Bruce Lee's dead because of you. This film is essentially blatantly saying, yes, she was in...
Yeah, so she's adding fuel to that particular fire and what have you.
Which is fucking disgusting.
We'll draw a line under that one at this moment in time, because next up, we've had the good, we've had the bad, here's the completely insane. This is The Dragon Lives Again, which was released in 1977. This time, Bruce Lee is played by Bruce Leon, who, to be fair, looks more like Bruce's co-star in Enter the Dragon, Bolo Young. But, hey-ho.
Bolo-exploitation?
Bolo-exploitation. Anywho, off to a great start with this one already then. As the film opens with the recently deceased Bruce Lee waking up in the underworld with a massive erection. To the sounds of Kung Fu Fighting by Carl Williams. Now, we're not making this up. It sounds as though we are, but we're not making this up. However, very, very quickly, it is revealed that Bruce's morning wood is in fact his trusty pair of nunchakas that he apparently sleeps with all night. And no, nunchakas is not a euphemism for something else. We'll cut there so my good friend just composes himself ever so slightly.
And the thing is, if you're wondering why Bruce Lee doesn't look like Bruce Lee, don't worry, because they explain that as well, because apparently when you die, your features change a little when you die.
Are you sure it's Bruce Lee? Doesn't look like him. It so happens when a person dies, their face and their body undergo a change. When he was alive, all the girls were after him. They just ate him up. Oh,
Of course they fucking do.
Now, the thing is, trying to get back to a serious note, things are not all as they should be in the underworld, which is ruled over by a mafia of pop culture icons including James Bond, Clint Eastwood, Emmanuel, The Godfather and The Exorcist. Now, the group are used to running the show and are terrorising the lesser-known inhabitants like Popeye the Sailor Man and someone whom I'm assuming is Tom Baker's version of Doctor Who.
Splink! Splink! Splink!
No, not you, John.
He's done it again, you know. Bruce becomes the leader of the underdogs, teaching them how to fight and taking on an increasingly bonkers set of attackers, including armies of skeletons and mummies that appear to be doing ring of roses, before fighting against Dracula and even the Lord of the Underworld. Yes, this film ends with Bruce Lee essentially fighting the devil himself. And I swear I am not making any of this up.
But despite how crass the movie is, I'd like to think that of all of these movies, this is the one Bruce would probably have enjoyed the most. Surely, even he would have cracked a smile at some of the first-class nonsense in here, from Kato fighting Dracula to Popeye punching out mummies. Popeye, even at one point, eats spinach, whilst his trademark theme music plays.
Not even subtle. There's that, and there's also an ongoing romantic subplot where loads of naked underworld temptresses are fighting over Bruce Lee's manhood, which apparently is huge. I'm sure he wouldn't have minded that at all, and again, I swear I'm not making this up. I mean, whether or not Bruce Lee was a bit of a womanizer when he was alive, I don't know, but, you know, the film certainly seems to imply that the girls went mad for him, and he's quite well...
He's
rather generous down there, apparently.
his constant companion.
Yeah.
I think you've been overdoing it. I cannot say that I blame you, but you should just look at yourself.
Oh, Grandpa, don't be so unfair. When a man's endowed like Bruce, the girls are bound to want him.
Next up, we have My Name Called Bruce, which was released in 1978. And no, this is not to be confused with the other film, My Name is Bruce. That's about a different Bruce, but no less mighty. As you probably guessed by the mangled title and the opening credits that include superstarring Bruce Lee, spelled L-E, and screenplay by Zaki Chan, it is clear that this movie has gone for an almost deliberate grindhouse look in tone.
The plot involves a stolen vase that's smuggled around various countries, and our heroes, Bruce Lee, L.E. as Tiger, a freelance secret agent, and Christina Chung as Detective Lee, L-I,
Right.
are in pursuit of it. But who will get there first? This premise seems straightforward, but My Name Called Bruce pays little attention to its own narrative as, spoiler alert, everyone seems to completely forget about the vase before the end of the film, but they still carry on fighting anyway. Okay.
Never let anything get in the way of a good scrap.
It's a shame that Christina Chung didn't do anything else because, in another dimension somewhere, she could have been an A-lister herself. Well, she was also in another film called Ninja vs. Bruce Lee, but that literally just reused her footage from this film and redubbed it into a new story. And no, surprisingly enough, that wasn't a Godfrey Ho movie.
Although it really, really does sound like one. Chung is clearly more than capable of holding her own alongside Lee, whose choreography is very, very good. There's a great motorcycle chase in this. There is the tried and tested final fight by the sea, which is fun to watch. And there's even a fight scene where Lee is tied up and blindfolded, but still wins. Eat your heart out, Black Widow.
It's cheap and nasty in places, and again there's loads of copyright infringing disco numbers throughout the film. It's also only an hour and 20 minutes long, but it feels like there's loads of padding throughout the film to try and make it feature length. Too many scenes go on for far too long, too many characters are brought in and then almost immediately forgotten about, and there's too many overly long driving sections put in there as well. You could have easily have chopped out 45 minutes of this film and it would still make sense, because it doesn't really kick off until Tiger, removes his shirt, Bruce Lee style, to fight off some baddies.
There's lots of unintentional humour in this as well. I mean, the dubbing is as bad as you can expect, with plenty of smug chuckling from baddies, especially the main bad guy, who is called Nifty for some reason.
Ooh, Nifty.
Nifty.
That's almost as scary as Larry from Ninja Squad. Nifty.
Nifty. I am the boss. Nifty. And because this is 1978, everyone is strutting around in flares and wide collars, which is, good for a giggle. Also, how the hell did Tiger catch up with Detective Lee and Nifty at the end? I mean, we see a long chase sequence where Nifty is in a car and Lee is on a motorbike. They go over hills and mountains, over a stream and onto a beach where they start fighting. And then Tiger turns up, still without a shirt on, to help Lee out. How did he get there? Seriously.
When he turned up for the fight, I actually burst out laughing. It's like, where the fuck did he come from? Despite the title of the film, no one throughout the entire movie is called Bruce, or even says the word Bruce. But, despite all its ridiculous flaws, if you're interested in the more obscure side of Hong Kong cinema, then this is a great example of Bruceploitation.
It's only going to get worse, isn't it?
Or better, depending on your point of view.
Next up, we have Enter the Game of Death from 1978, where it is the early 1940s and the fate of China rests on a secret artifact that must not reach the hands of the Japanese. Chinese and American resistance groups seek to enlist the help of the world's greatest martial artist, Bruce Lee. L.E. So he can recover the artifact from the top of a pagoda guarded by mysterious fighters.
Yes, as you've probably gathered, this is a very loose adaptation of Bruce Lee's original concept for Game of Death. However, whilst some of the different floors of the pagoda have regular-looking martial arts guardians that use swords or nunchakus, other floors contain guardians that verge more on the supernatural side, awakening from their slumber to fight intruders and protect the artifact. The scene in the Temple of the Snakes is jaw-dropping. Not only do we get some grade A snake-style kung fu going off, but the guy who's doing the fighting is actually fighting Bruce whilst he's got a pair of cobras in his hand, whilst a load of other cobras are like slithering along the floor. Lee's lack of regard for his own personal safety often made for some incredible scenes, but this one is the most insane by far.
Snakes? Why would there have to be snakes? True to the spirit of Bruce Lee's own fighting style, Jeet Kune Do, Lee showcases lots of different fighting styles alongside a cast of different martial arts actors. Even the mighty American ninja himself, Steve James, turns up to fight Bruce. And this was before he turned up as one of the baseball furies in The Warriors.
Hey, throw back to a previous episode.
Bolo Young appears in a far bigger role than usual. But the Bruce versus Bolo sword fight at the start has been blatantly spliced in from another film to pad out time. And no, again, this is not Godfrey Ho. Although it does demonstrate that some filmmakers were almost as splicey happy as he was.
Also, the ending drags on far longer than it needs to. Ultimately, going up the pagoda was a complete and utter waste of time because one of the main baddies takes the item out of his safe and sneaks out through the back door anyway. Bruce follows him and then proceeds to methodically punch every character still standing who hasn't already been punched, like he's ticking off a checklist with his fists. But these flaws aside, Enter the Game of Death is still great fun and shows that you don't need a lot of money to showcase some stunning and imaginative kung fu. Even Sammo Hung himself took on Bruceploitation at full force with such films as Enter the Fat Dragon in 1978. Sammo plays Arlo, an overweight pig farmer and Bruce Lee fanatic who's sent to Hong Kong to work for his uncle on a food stall. He soon learns that what's acceptable in Bruce Lee movies, i.e. beating up everyone you have a minor disagreement with, doesn't mirror what's actually acceptable in real life. Who knew?
Strange that, really, isn't it? There actually isn't a plot to Enter the Fat Dragon. It's more of an episodic collection of comical hijinks like Mr. Bean, but with far more punching. There's a lot of sharp satire throughout as well, such as the scene where Ah Lung ends up on the set of a crap Bruceploitation movie, or the way in which the Jim Kelly character is clearly just an Asian man in blackface.
Not so good. No, man. It's hot dough.
Yeah. Poking fun at how Hollywood would cast white actors in Asian roles, something that still occurs today.
The Last Airbender, anyone? Sammo's martial arts skills are phenomenal, as always. The dinner party fight, during which he spontaneously invents new kung fu styles based off different types of food, is the stuff of genius. As funny as it is jaw-dropping. Although Enter the Fat Dragon's loose structure doesn't quite sustain itself for a full 90 minutes, it's still good for a few chuckles, and Sammo's imitation of Bruce Lee's on-screen presence is absolutely spot on.
Oh, but that's the genius of Sammo.
Yeah.
That's the genius of Sammo. There's a man that has never picked up a kitchen utensil that he could not use to inflict pain upon someone.
Ding.
我是朱福龙，福禄寿的福，李小龙的龙。
From there we go on to the 1980s and one of the daftest and most ridiculous Bruceploitation films that earns its place on this list through audacity and imagination alone. The Clones of Bruce Lee, which was released in 1980. Following the death of Bruce Lee, and yes, once again, footage from the funeral is shown, a secret division called the SBI, the Special British Intelligence, swoop in and manage to get hold of a blood sample so that their scientists can successfully create 3 Bruce Lee clones played by Bruce Lee, L.E., Dragon Lee, and Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Of course, you just know that the head scientist that was responsible for the project will be up to no good later on, as he keeps chuckling smugly to himself in classic villain style. Oh, and he is played by the same actor that was the mob boss in Way of the Dragon.
Bit of a giveaway, that. Following a brief training sequence that features an appearance from Bolo Young, yes, him again, and blatant theft of the Rocky soundtrack, the 3 Bruce Lees are then sent off on special missions around the world. Well, Hong Kong and Thailand at least. And if stealing music from Rocky wasn't enough, 30 minutes into the film, they're also stealing music from the Warriors soundtrack as well.
Oh, for God's sake. Eventually, the wonderfully crazed villain of the movie, Dr. Nai, which is presumably Thailand's answer to Dr. No, turns up with his kipper ties and maniacal laughter. Seriously, this guy finds everything hilarious.
Today we conquer Thailand, and tomorrow the entire world.
He has an insane plan to take over the world using his secret formula that can turn men into indestructible bronze warriors.
Well, it's actually men in badly applied bronze paint running around in their underpants, but you can't fault the guy for having ambition. The three cloned Bruces must team up to take on this army of invincible bronze men if humanity has any hope for survival. Luckily for our heroes, they discover that the bronze men can be defeated if they're force-fed fertilizer plants.
I'm sorry, what?
It's hard not to love this. In addition to the mad plot and the star power, the three Bruces actually bump into a Brucey bonus of Bruce Thai when they hit Thailand.
Oh, for God's
So
sake.
we've got 4 Bruce Lees knocking about. There's a ton of endlessly quotable dialogue. My favourite lines including Dr. Nye declaring,
Bronze soldiers. That will surprise the world.
and his response when he's told that there's men invading his lair, and he says, "Do you get a good look at them?" It's like, "Yes, sir. 2 of them look like Bruce Lee." To which point he screws up his face and declares solemnly,
This sounds like the work of the SBI.
let's be honest here, clones of Bruce Lee is complete and utter trash, but it's trash with a shiny coat of badly applied bronze paint on the top. Although be careful, that paint is most likely toxic, so don't lick it or anything. I enjoyed it immensely.
What the film or the bronze plate?
Bit of both.
Whatever floats your boat, mate. Yes. I also imagine that you'll probably like this next one that we're going to talk about, which we have Challenge of the Tiger. And it's the team up that I've always dreaded and that David has always dreamed upon, as Bruce Lee teams up with Richard Harrison. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that is right. Ninja Master Gordon from the Godfrey Ho films turns up in Bruceploitation.
Fucking yes.
It's like all my nightmares have come apart, come up all at once.
Brucey and Dickie are a pair of SIA buddies on the trail of a secret formula that, if unleashed, will sterilise everyone on Earth. And they aren't the only ones. Also in pursuit of this super sperm killer are a number of bad guys. Everyone from neo-Nazis to Vietnamese spies are keen to get their hands on the formula, as the action goes from Spain to Hong Kong and everywhere else in between. Before the opening credits have finished rolling, Bruce Lee's beaten up about 10 blokes in a pub car park somewhere, and Richard Harrison has played topless tennis with some fashion models.
My goodness. What a party this is.
Dave.
Oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a moment there.
You are a terrible person.
I'm only smiling because I've seen the uncensored version of that.
Oh, just get on with it.
Anyway, about 5 minutes later, Bruce is kung fu fighting a bull, an actual live bull. Told you that Lee was crazy. And it only gets nutty from there. This is what happens when you put Bruce Lee, L.E., behind the camera. In addition to starring in this film, he also directed it and even wrote the story alongside someone called Poon Fan, which shouldn't be surprising considering the amount of gratuitous female nudity. They clearly were a Poon fan.
Can you get a cold shower before we record the next time? Seriously. The dialogue is sleazy and the plot is ridiculous, but the movie just clearly wants to give the audience as much entertainment as possible without stopping to think about whether it fits or it's in remotely good taste. Obviously, it comes with the trappings of extremely low-budget trash cinema, but if you're a fan of the genre, this is solid gold exploitation. You even get the likes of Bolo Young and Huang Jan Li popping up the way as well. Seriously?
Yeah? Bolo Young, he just keeps popping up in these things. And what's funny as well, Huang Jan Li is in the same film as Richard Harrison.
Yes.
They would actually end up in another film together later on, the infamous Ninja Terminator.
No.
Although I'm not sure that they actually knew about that at the time. At least in this film, they're aware that they're in the same film together.
Oh, this is okay. That's a happy, spicy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they're actually aware of each other in this film.
Right,
Yes, it's
okay.
not two films called together. Also, Bolo Young, bless him. He's popped up in a couple of these films now, but in this one, it looks like he's running around in his underwear. Perhaps he forgot to put his clothes on this morning. Challenge of the Tiger is one of the most vulgar, crass and dirty martial arts movies I've ever seen, and I bloody love it. I absolutely love this film. It's so good, in fact, that I don't think this small segment can give it justice. I think we need to make this a full episode. Just, you know, maybe if you're watching it, make sure your missus is out of the house, just in case she walks in while the top tennis scene's on, yeah?
You would have thought that when Game of Death was finally released in 1978 that this would be the cut-off point for Bruceploitation films. In actual fact, it's the opposite. It just carried on going and going, even to the point where Game of Death itself got a sequel. Now, I can understand finishing off an incomplete Bruce Lee movie, but why would you then make a sequel that had absolutely nothing to do with it? Imaginatively entitled Game of Death 2, which was released in 1981, although in some territories it was called the New Game of Death or Tower of Death, but despite the title, there is very, very little connection to the previous film.
Well, apart from the dubbing that is very sort of tacked on and sort of indicates that the character Bobby Lowe is in fact the brother of Billy Lowe from the first film.
He is killed off during the beginning of the movie, leaving Bobby to avenge his brother's death, and seemingly not learning their lesson from the last time, footage of Bruce Lee's actual funeral is once again used here.
In a plot that sounds familiar, Bobby goes to Korea and enters a pagoda where his brother's killers are waiting for him, and one by one he extracts his revenge on them. But instead of going up the floors, this time he's going down into an underground base where he fights a lion, and definitely not a bloke in a cheap ill-fitting suit, and a Chinese version of Fred Flintstone. From there it all gets a bit sci-fi and weird, as Bruce has to contend with hazards like acid pits and electrified floors in order to get to his brother's killers.
Game of Death 2 features unused film footage from both Enter the Dragon and the original Game of Death, along with additional scenes filmed to tell the story, and the occasional insert from Bruce's other films. Eventually, though, the deleted scenes from Enter the Dragon were actually put back into the film for the uncut special edition on DVD, and the missing fight scene in the greenhouse from Game of Death got put back into the original film for the special edition of that film as well. So, if you were watching Game of Death 2 just for the actual Bruce Lee footage, it's now redundant.
But to be perfectly honest, the fighting is still superb, and the premise gets more bonkers as it goes on. It's almost a shame that this got marketed as a sequel to Game of Death, even being packaged together in bundles with other Bruce Lee films. This really should have just been its own thing. Even the legendary Jackie Chan was not able to escape the Bruceploitation. Jackie had originally started his movie career as an extra and stunt artist in some of Bruce Lee's movies, and he ended up being given roles where he was promoted as the next Bruce Lee, such as New Fist of Fury in 1976, which was actually done as a official sequel to Fist of Fury.
Yeah, it was.
You also did have Fist of Fury 2 and 3, which made out that they were sequels, but then they basically came along and said, oh, actually no, this is the proper sequel.
This is the proper sequel.
Yeah. Not that it's any better.
No, because it really isn't. Now, although Jackie looked up to Bruce and saw him as a role model, a lot of Jackie's early career must have been very, very frustrating when directors tried to turn him into another Bruce Lee or another Clint Eastwood, like what happened when he first attempted to crack Hollywood.
Police, give me the keys. Get the hell out of here! What are you doing? Give me the fucking keys.
In interviews years later, Jackie was clear to point out that Bruce is Bruce, Jackie is Jackie, and that Bruce is serious, I'm comedy.
But ironically, it was perhaps thanks to Jackie Chan that this practice of Bruceploitation eventually came to an end. After a couple of years of director Lowell trying to turn Jackie into the next Bruce Lee, Jackie was loaned out to another film studio for a 2-picture deal. Away from Lowell's watchful eye, Jackie was able to do his own thing and make some comically themed movies that resulted in box office success, with Snake in the Eagle's Shadow and Drunken Master, both released in 1978.
Now, director Yan Wu-ping allowed Chan complete freedom over his stunt work, and as a result, the two movies helped to establish the comedic kung fu genre, which turned out to be very refreshing to Hong Kong audiences. These films established Jackie as the new king of Hong Kong martial arts cinema, and the trend of Bruceploitation movies began to die down a few years later as a result of this. It was also around about this time of the beginning of the Shaw Brothers film era in the late 1970s, which started with movies such as The Five Deadly Venoms. Although Bruce Lee's influence on Hong Kong action cinema remained strong, it was perhaps just as well that actors were able to begin establishing their own personalities, and the films began to take a more comedic approach.
There has been a number of times since the 80s where Bruceploitation has crept back into movies, but these have come across as more of respectful homages rather than outrageous ways to trick cinemagoers into parting with their cash. As much as the Bruceploitation boom created a slew of fascinating martial arts films, some terrible, some brilliant, some brilliantly terrible, it does really put into context the almost supernatural talent of a man so good at what he did that he managed to inspire a whole genre devoted to imitating him, and, ironically enough, reaffirming just how unique an individual he really was.
Oh. And we're back.
Yes.
Hello there.
Well, technically you say back, but you know.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey.
Yeah.
You
did that one. That wasn't me.
Oh shit.
That wasn't me. You did that one.
Splink! Splink! Splink!
Fair enough. So, that was
Yes.
Bruceploitation.
Yes, it was.
There are many other examples of the genre. However, the ones that we've compiled together, I feel, are either the best or the worst, depending on your point of view.
Or the completely batshit insane.
For me, I did enjoy watching Enter the Fat Dragon. I enjoyed Challenge of the Tiger. I enjoyed The Dragon Lives Again, just because of how insane they are.
Yeah.
Stuff like Exit the Dragon, Enter the Tiger, I wasn't as keen on. I did rather enjoy My Name Called Bruce.
My Name Called Bruce.
I did rather enjoy Enter the Game of Death. A lot of the other stuff, though, I mean, things like Bruce Lee, the man, the myth, just... There's a lot of stuff here I enjoyed. There's a lot of stuff I didn't like and probably will never watch again. I do feel Bruceploitation is a genre that you may want to dip your toe into every now and again, and there are many films of the Bruceploitation genre that you can find on YouTube, that you can find on Amazon Prime, and if you're in the slightest bit curious, by all means, give it a go.
Bruceploitation shows us what we've missed.
Yeah.
More than anything else. And yet we have a good laugh at these Bruceploitation films. We have a good laugh at these films, but ultimately that's what's behind it.
I felt that we needed to, because like the Game of Death episode we did was a little bit somber in tone.
Yeah.
And after that, I thought we need to have a bit of a laugh after.
Yeah, we don't do reviews that are somber in tone usually.
Yeah.
Because quite frankly, the films that we look at aren't somber in tone and are a bit insane, to be honest with you. So yeah. So for the review of Game of Death, we apologise. However,
although I hope you still enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's Bruce.
It's Bruce. Well, we had to move on from Bruce Lee. The martial arts and action movie genre had to move on from Bruce, which is why.
And boy, did it!
Yes, because when we come to our next episode in our trilogy, if you like,
Bruce-related trilogy of stuff.
That's right. In our next episode, we will focus on the man who inherited Bruce Lee's crown as the King of Kung Fu, as we take a look at one of his forgotten classics. Now, do we want to mention who that person is and what film we're covering at this point? Or shall we leave that as a mystery?
I don't think we really need to leave it as a mystery, because I think, considering that the end part of the review invokes this certain gentleman rather overtly.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to beat around the bush.
Okay.
Guys, it's Jackie.
It's Jackie Chan. In our next episode, we will be talking about Jackie Chan. Not just Chan the man himself, but one of his movies that, in the spirit of this show, had a bit of a troubled production, and it's one that Chan himself is not entirely happy with.
Not really, no, but there's a lot to it to enjoy.
including a nice little reference to Bruce Lee himself.
Indeed, yes.
And a nice little reference to a very popular 90s fighting game at the time.
Indeed it does.
You know, Hadouken. We are, of course, referring to, in our next episode, we need to talk about City Hunter. So, until next time, please leave a like, leave a comment on this video.
The thingies will be here somewhere.
Please share this with all the wolves that appear to be in the next room.
Karaoke room in there.
There's a karaoke room. Oh, we might have to go in there later on.
Oh, Carl Williams Kung Fu Fighting. So
yeah. If there's kung fu fighting in there, I'm fucking on that shit.
Ooh, so, Nunchaka.
So please leave a like, leave a comment.
Bye bye.
He's off to the karaoke bar. Share this with all your friends. Share this across social media. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. All that usual gubbins. And until next time, I am the Big Daddy D.
Oh, hang on. Sorry, I've got to come back. Hi, I'm Luke Murphy. See ya. Bye.
And we will see you on the next episode of We Need to Talk About ... Goodbye, everybody. Let me get on that karaoke shit.